Hello, I'm Dr. Eve Delunas, and today I'm going to be talking about the number one thing that gets in the way of your loving yourself. What is that number one thing? It is a lack of self-forgiveness. A lack of self-forgiveness means that there are things from the past, mistakes you've made, choices you've made, times you've screwed up, and you have not stopped judging yourself harshly over your behavior. You're holding a grudge against yourself, one or more grudges against yourself for the things that you did or didn't do in the past. Perhaps you have hurt other people, perhaps you hurt yourself, perhaps both. It could be any number of things, but the important thing is that you're still holding on to it. Rather than forgiving yourself, taking the lesson and moving on, you're stuck there. You're stuck hating yourself or feeling guilty or feeling ashamed, judging yourself harshly, berating yourself, putting yourself down, reminding yourself of something that you think is terrible that you did or didn't do. How does this get in the way of self-love? Well, for one thing, as long as you're beating up on yourself, you're not loving yourself. You're doing the opposite of that. Self-love means we forgive ourselves. Self-love means that we learn from our mistakes and we let go of the self-judgment, of the self-hatred, of the guilt, of the shame. We make peace with that event or series of events from our past. We let it go, we take the lesson with us, and we love the younger self, the one who made the mistake. We open our hearts to that younger self. Now, for many of us, this seems very difficult. In fact, I can tell you that in the 35 to 40 years that I've been practicing psychotherapy and coaching, that every single client I ever worked with who was depressed had a problem with self-forgiveness. And in many cases, when they forgave themselves, their depression lifted. They started to feel better. They started to feel as if they had escaped from some kind of internal prison. They started to feel free again and open to loving themselves and open to loving life and allowing life to be a time of joy and celebration and well-being and success and abundance. Because as long as we're not forgiving ourselves, very often we are also holding back the abundance that is available to flow into our lives because we don't believe that we're deserving of it. We're telling ourselves, I'm a bad person, I screwed up really badly, I hurt this person, I did this wrong, I made this terrible choice. And therefore, I don't deserve to be happy and healthy and joyful today. I'm punishing myself at a deep level for the mistakes that I made. Sometimes we perpetuate really negative habits, habits having to do with diminishing our health and well-being. And we continue those habits because of a lack of self-love and because we haven't forgiven ourselves. So this can be a very core issue for many of us. And it's not an easy one. I have to say I've struggled with this myself. It's not easy to forgive ourselves. It is a real challenge in many cases to forgive ourselves. However, until we do so, we can't move on. It's like we are keeping ourselves stuck. And the only way to get unstuck, the only way to open up the pathways of new possibilities and potentials in your life is to forgive yourself. So let's say that you're kind of open to forgiving yourself. How do you go about doing that? Well, first of all, you realize that there isn't any other living, breathing human being who hasn't made mistakes. And most of us, self included, have made big mistakes. We have regrets. We have paths we didn't take or paths we did take that we regret having taken or not taken, that we feel badly about. We have things we did that we think now, oh my word, what was I thinking? Or why wasn't I thinking? We have times that we made choices that were absolutely stupid, crazy, ridiculous, now that we are looking at the situation in hindsight. What we forget is at the time we were making the choice, we were doing the best we knew how. The other thing we forget is that that younger self is the reason you are the person you are today. It's because of that younger self's mistakes that you have the wisdom, the strength, the courage, the confidence, the know-how, the awareness, the self-awareness, the consciousness that you do, the loving heart, the open heart that you do today. You would not be the same person you are today had you not made those mistakes. So in some ways, believe it or not, that younger self of yours was doing you a big favor because you learned an important lesson from that mistake. Whatever it was, you learned something very valuable that contributed to who you are, that made you a better person, a stronger person, a smarter person, a wiser person, a more loving person. So you owe a great debt to that part of you that made the mistake. And so what can you do if you realize that, if you start to think about that? Realize that your younger self made a mistake that has served you since. Realize that your younger self was doing the best he or she knew how. Well, what you can do is you can decide, have the intention to, first of all, make a list of all the different mistakes that you're still holding against yourself. There may be a long list. For many of us, it's a very long list. Or there may be just a few things on the list, but they're big. For you, they're big. Believe me, for anyone else, they're probably not big because we look at our own mistakes and judge them much more harshly than other people do. I found that to be true over the years and working with hundreds of clients. People tend to think that the mistake they made is the worst mistake of all, when actually it's no different than the mistakes any of us make. We all make them. We are all human. And we continue to make them throughout our lives. It's not something we stop doing, but hopefully our mistakes get less severe, less intense because we're wiser and make better choices for ourselves. So, okay, you make this list, and then I recommend that you choose one thing on the list that you're willing to deal with, that you are willing to forgive yourself for doing or not doing. And the next thing that you could do is you can close your eyes and actually take yourself in your mind's eye back to the time when that younger self made that mistake, and really get in touch with who you were then, because it's not who you are now. You're going to notice that younger person is different. You probably have forgotten how it felt to be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years younger than you are now. You've probably forgotten how it felt to be in his or her shoes. You've probably forgotten how difficult a time that younger self was having. And by going back in your mind's eye and really getting in touch with that younger self, you can actually come to some aha experiences. And I'll tell you, when I've done these processes with my clients, I find they never fail to say, oh my word, I'd forgotten that self was really struggling, or that self really was stuck or confused or puzzled or hurting or whatever it might be. They often come back. They almost always come back from this experience and say it was an aha experience, because they had much more compassion for their younger self after they went back to that time in their lives in their mind's eye and saw how it was then. And that's the next thing I recommend that you do, is open your heart to that younger self and see if you can find compassion for him or her, just like you would have compassion if it was your son or your daughter or your best friend or somebody you really love going through that hard time and making that mistake. My hunch is you would not judge that person the way you've judged yourself so harshly and held it against yourself for so long. So see if you can open your heart and start to feel compassion rather than judgment for that younger self. The next thing I recommend that you do is I recommend that you say thank you. Say thank you for making this mistake, for making this choice, because although it hurt you at some level to do it in the moment, it served you and me for the rest of our lives because we learned such an important lesson. It made me the person I am today. It made me a better person, a stronger person, a more loving person, a more courageous person. Whatever it is that you know you gained from that experience, share it with your younger self. Thank your younger self and really mean it. Thank that younger self from the bottom of your heart. And then tell that younger self, if you're willing to, I forgive you. I forgive you for making this mistake. I understand now. I feel compassion for you, and I am no longer going to judge you harshly for this. I'm no longer going to carry judgment around with me for you and for your mistake, for your poor choice. I am no longer going to hate you or feel ashamed of you or whatever it is that you've been feeling towards that younger self. And see if you can give that younger self a big hug as your present day self and really open your heart even more to that younger self. And then when you're ready to, you can come back and open your eyes and notice if you feel lighter, because often after such an experience, that's exactly how we feel. We feel lighter. We feel unburdened. We feel freer. We feel as if we've released something, as if we have liberated ourselves from chaining ourselves to some kind of experience in the past. We have released those chains so that we are now free to move forward, not weighing ourselves down with the past anymore, liberating ourselves to move forward in new directions, to experience more of what we desire in our lives, to open to greater abundance, to open to greater peace, to more love, to more well-being, to more joy, to better health and vitality, whatever it is that you're wanting in your life at this time. So that's the process, and I would love to hear from you. Please comment if you have any comment about what any thoughts or feelings about self-forgiveness, any experiences that you've had. If you try this process, what do you notice about it? I look forward to hearing from you, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.